You're listening to Around the SEC with Steve Willis, Corey Burton, and Jeb Beecham, your source for SEC football information. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Around the SEC. I am your host, Stephen Willis. Along with Corey Burton and Jeb Beecham, we are more than happy to be here this week to discuss all of last week's games. Well, not all of last week's games, some of last week's games, and all of the games coming up. Corey, how you doing?
I'm great, man. Georgia's 1-0. We kick off against Glencliff tomorrow night. Granted, it doesn't get postponed like our game got postponed last week. So I'm doing great, man.
All right, Jeb, how you doing this week?
I'm pretty good. Tennessee's 1-0 as well, so just barely skated by. But thank you for having me back. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Of course, like always, you can follow us on Twitter at the Stephen Willis or at the Old Positive or at Old Positively. Like us or subscribe on Facebook or YouTube and hit the bell at Positively Ole Miss. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Pomcast/ also facebook.com/Around the SEC. And go to our Twitch channel at Positively Ole Miss. Last weekend, the first weekend of SEC football, there was a little bit of sloppiness among the games, but LSU and MSU was quite fun to watch, and KJ Costello could be quite special. Isn't that right, Corey?
That's right. I mean, he comes in from Stanford, and we didn't really know what he was going to bring because Stanford really didn't ask him to do much except turn around and hand it to Bryce Love or whoever the tailback was at the time, and we didn't really know what his capabilities were. But obviously, Mike Leach did, and Mike Leach does what Mike Leach does. I don't see why anyone can't defend it because he's not doing anything new. He calls his plays from a little index card. And that might even be too big. And they just predicate on execution, and that's what they did. They went out, they executed, and they got reps. They found space, they threw to space, and they had LSU discombobulated.
Jeb, what did you see in that game? What was your perspective on it as well?
Well, I was actually quite surprised. I really like Mike Leach, and I was excited to see what he could do in the SEC, but I honestly had no idea that air raid would work as well as it did. LSU obviously lost a lot of starters, so I knew that they were going to have a tough time getting going and getting everything together, but it didn't look much worse than I anticipated for them. So from a fan's perspective, it was just a lot of fun to watch Mississippi State's offense with KJ Costello.
Yeah, and I was on Twitter and I said that LSU has a defense problem, but it's currently being masked by their offense problem. That's kind of how they're set up. This is not the same team. Joe Burrow and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jamar Chase and Jordan Jefferson and those guys, it's not – those aren't those dudes. To the point where we're going to get to it a little bit later on, I'm not willing to lay 20 points for them against Vanderbilt and Nashville.
Yeah, I'm not either. I think we'll talk about it more when we make our picks, but I mean – LSU's a mess right now. They're trying to find who can do it. We know Terrace Marshall can do it, but whoever else they got behind him, we don't know. We have no clue. I would like to say Eric Gilbert, but they just won't give him the ball. They won't give him the rock.
Yeah, and when Terrace Marshall was the fourth option at wide receiver, they were elite. He was better than any fourth corner or fourth defensive back that he was going to face. Now that he is the number one, that's a whole new set of problems they found.
Exactly, because the people they recruited behind them are either so green that they're just not ready, or they misevaluated and they turned out to be bust. And I'm sure it's a combination of both, but it's got to be frustrating because you're LSU, and it's not like they all of a sudden forgot how to recruit, and it's not like they didn't sign 4- and 5-star talent all over the place. It's just now we're going to start to see what this coaching staff is made of. Can they develop these guys? Can they develop all these recruits that they brought in and without any big names? Can they make it happen? They surely hope so, but we don't know. But we'll have to find out, and we'll have to see kind of how they play Vandy. Do they bounce back, cover the spread, and get back to what what they're used to in LSU, or or is it much of the same? LSU, I mean, Vandy's tough, so Vandy's not an easy out. Vandy's going to be pesky for anybody.
Yes, they're very solid on defense, and they're going to give Miles Brennan and that LSU offense all they want. The question is, can the Vandy offense score enough to offset what LSU will do? That's the question at this point in time.
I think eventually they will be able to. I mean, Ken Seals is just a freshman, but if you watched how he took command of that offense, they don't have any horses right now, and they're trying to find again. Their team trying to find what they've got. They're an extremely inexperienced team, and it's basically the young leading the young. Got a brand new coordinator, so I mean it's all new there at Vandy. So they're trying to feel their way through it, and they played pretty well considering what their circumstances were at Texas A&M, not having spring practice in a completely screwed up fall camp. So Vandy's gonna be a tough out. When they figure it out, they might be fairly dangerous.
All right, Tennessee defeated South Carolina to go to 1-0. Big game for Jarrett Garantano. I like the Tennessee run game. Tennessee comes across. This is my 2-sentence description of this game. Tennessee is a very solid team, and South Carolina was plenty good, just not when it mattered.
That's typical South Carolina, Jeb.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree. I really liked what I saw out of Tennessee in certain spots. Their defense gave up a touchdown early, but then really settled down. Henry To'oTo'o had a nice pick six. They had a couple of good sacks to end drives. I will say this: South Carolina made some good adjustments at halftime in their offense, and that Colin Hills, they really picked it up and did a great job in the second half. With Tennessee's offense on the other side of the ball, I love their run game. Ty Chandler had a great game. Eric Gray looked pretty good. Their offensive line looks good. Brandon Johnson had an amazing one-hand catch down the sideline. Josh Palmer had some great catches, one of them for a touchdown. Garantano, though, is just the most maddeningly inconsistent quarterback I've ever seen in my life. And it's upsetting that we don't have anybody on the roster that can manage a game a little better than that because he's so up and down.
Jeb. You do. They do. But they just for whatever reason don't want to go with him. I was talking with one of our assistant coaches earlier today, a couple hours ago about this, and I was asking his opinion on Guarantano and does Stroud give them any, like, how much less is Stroud or Maurer? What are they not giving you that Guarantano gives you? And I don't think you're gonna overwhelm people with Garantano. So why not go with the younger guy at that point?
At this point, I don't know what those two must be thinking. If they're looking at this game and looking at what Garantano does, and then saying, "But the coach has decided gives us a better chance of winning than we do." I feel like their confidence has to just get shot from that because I can't imagine either one of them being as inconsistent as that. And Garantano, you see every now and then, like he had one drive where he would hit just two beautiful passes, one of them for a touchdown, including that long run he had for 20 yards as well. But other than that, he's just way behind receivers with passes, way over receivers. He's just I don't know what the Tennessee staff is thinking or why they feel like Garantano is the better option right now, and I'd really like to know.
They're playing the guy that they feel like is going to take care of the ball the most, and I don't see what they see in Garantano. I don't get it, but as a Georgia fan, I'll take it. I'll let them figure out after the Georgia game, hopefully, but we'll let them figure it out.
All right. And also last week, Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts scored about 478 touchdowns against Ole Miss in their 51-35 win. Lane Kiffin and the offense looked terrific, put up over 600 yards. The defense gave up close to 700 yards. Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts, there were 2 or 3 of the touchdowns that Kyle Pitts scored, he was being double covered. It was an unreal game, and the question I have to ask is, are we looking at a redo of 2019 LSU in Florida?
I wouldn't go that far. I don't think beyond Kadarius Toney and Kyle Pitts, I don't think they have quite the depth at skill positions like LSU had. I mean, LSU is, they're up there in the pantheon with the with the 04 USC team, the 01 Miami team, those type teams where you just got dudes everywhere. And, last year's LSU team had Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. They had Thaddeus Moss, Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, that's 5 guys right there. Terrace Marshall was your number 4 receiver. I mean, it was disgusting how much talent they had. Not to mention on defense, Grant Delpit, Jacoby Stevens, Derek Stingley, Patrick Queen. All of those, that whole linebacking core that got drafted in the first round. They had probably between their offense and defense. I bet they had 8 NFL guys in last year's draft. I mean, it was unreal, and I don't think Florida is that deep. I do think they play way above their head. I do think they play at that level of that, but I think they don't quite have the depth to really crown them the next LSU. So we'll see. Maybe they prove me wrong. I don't know. They proved me wrong last week when I said they wouldn't cover the spread. So, I could be wrong.
Did you see the thing on Twitter with Jordan Rodgers where they ran the circus concept on offense like 12 different times or something from 12 different formations, and
they did it in a row. It was 10 times in a row, and he was 9 of 10 completing it. It was, I saw that. It was crazy. He was like 9 of 10 for like 175, maybe like a touchdown, I think was the stat line just on that play alone. And they ran it consecutively. So I was like, geez, it's crazy. But Steve, we knew that DJ Durkin was going to have his hands full with this defense. We knew that there wasn't much. The cupboard was kind of bare there. We knew there was going to be a lot of youth on the defense. We knew that, right, Steve?
Yeah, and the secondary was out for 2 or 3 weeks due to COVID, basically this year. So they probably have 5 to 10 practices together. I mean, that's the way it is. That's not a recipe for dealing with the top passing offense in the SEC.
Yeah, and that's, I think they held them for as long as they could. They, it was like they were hanging on for dear life, and then just the dam broke. And Ole Miss's offense just couldn't keep up because they started, once that dam breaks, especially in this league, it's, that's it, man. That's all she wrote. And you got to tip your cap to Lane Kiffin, though, with the offense. I mean, he got them ready to go. I was really impressed with how creative they got with the quarterback situation.
Yeah, it was definitely entertaining to watch. I do question whether or not 5 or 6 plays that much down the field for 200 yards. That's like half of their passing offense on 5 completions. Yeah. How sustainable that is.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it's got to be something they explore and I think as the season goes, and we saw it when we did boot camp the offense, you see the offense evolve where they got in their base packages and then they start doing stuff off of it, and so you'll start to see that jet sweep triple option that we saw at FAU. I think you'll see a special out of that where they run John Reese Plumlee across and then he pulls up and throws it. I think you'll see a lot more like double screens almost, like double read screens. I think you'll start to see some more shots downfield, and I think you'll see some more creative ways that they get Elijah Moore the ball. So this is in no means the final product of the Ole Miss offense, Steve. You and I both know that. But I'm excited to see what they have. And I'm excited to see how Elijah Moore gets in it, Jarian Ely, and and the name slips me. I apologize, especially to all your loyal listeners of the Palmcast. But who's 11? Who's number 11?
Dontario Drummond.
That's right, Drummond. I knew it was something. I knew it was Dontario something. Or so Dontario Drummond. He was impressive too. I was really impressed with what he could do.
Yeah. All right, segment 1 in the books. When we come back, we are going to get into this week. Nate Gabler from the Grove Report is going to stop by to talk Kentucky and all of the games in the SEC, so you can follow along there. We'll see you on the other side.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
and that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese. We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop. Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
Welcome back to Around the SEC. Stephen Willis along with Corey Burton and Jeb Beecham. We're getting into week 2 of the SEC. I think this is probably week 5 of college football and week -4 of the Big 12 or Big 10 and week -7 of the Pac-12. I don't know the count how
And week -72 for the MAC.
Yeah, so I don't know how they're going to do it, but that's the way it is. We're going to move in. The game of the week for this podcast is the Auburn at Georgia game. Georgia's coming into this as a
6.5 point favorite.
6.5 point favorite.
Only because we're at home, I think.
Yeah, and I'm going to start it off with this. D'Wan Mathis had the worst first start that I have seen since Michael Spurlock took over for Eli Manning in 2004 against Memphis. It was completely disheveled. His confidence just went downhill so fast. And shockingly enough, JT Daniels is going to be eligible this year.
Well, he's already eligible.
Yeah,
but
I mean this week.
He got cleared medically, which that's no surprise. They were going to clear him, but I think they thought they could get through the Arkansas game without him. And going back to D'Wan, I think what happened was he's not built to play in 3rd and long every single time they touch the ball. It just seemed like 13 penalties does not help a cause. It really doesn't. You can't survive with 13 penalties. You certainly have to take care of the ball, and you can't throw interceptions down in the deep red zone either. But also just it was just a calamity of errors. And I think when things are starting to go wrong, I don't know that he obviously hadn't played football in 2 years. And I think it was just one of those things where mistakes pile on mistakes and your confidence is shot. And so I think it got to that breaking point. I think Kirby was trying to let him play himself out of that. And then it got to that breaking point and he had to pull the plug because it was going from bad to worse. And so, I don't know where you go here, but you got to think that since JT Daniels is cleared, maybe he gets to start. But then again, Stetson looked good enough to maybe start the game and let JT Daniels just kind of come in. I don't know how they're going to play that. I mean, obviously Kirby is notoriously tight-lipped on this, but that's my prediction. I think Stetson is going to start it, and then I think JT Daniels is going to come in relief if Bennett struggles, or Bennett could take the job by the horns in this Auburn game, especially if he plays as well as he did in the second half against Arkansas.
D'Wan Mathis was coming in basically before Jamie Newman opted out. JT Daniels got, injured. Then there was D'Wan Mathis. Then there was Stetson Bennett, the fourth. Yeah. I don't think you go into I don't think you start him against Auburn, your 4th string quarterback, because whether he was or not, there was 3 weeks ago he was your 4th option. I think JT Daniels has to take it from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I think he should. I don't know that that's going to happen. If you're asking me what I would do, I would if I'm clearing JT Daniels, I'm clearing him for a reason. Get your butt out there and start.
Yeah.
But what I think will happen, what the more conservative route is maybe Stetson goes in. I don't know. I'm not sure what'll happen. I think JT should start though, and I think he was the reason Jamie Newman left because he outperformed him in camp.
And let's talk Auburn. They put up about 350 yards against Kentucky. Kentucky's a good team. They're very good on the line of scrimmage. And if it wasn't for Seth Williams making a couple of grown man plays, that was a really tight ball game.
It was. I thought Kentucky did a good job holding on as long as they could defensively. Terry Wilson just did not help them out whatsoever. He could not take care of the ball. He made bad decisions. And then I think Auburn couldn't get much of a running game going. That's probably a lot of credit due to Kentucky's defensive line, which we knew was going to be a factor coming into this game. But Bo Nix does what Bo Nix does. He makes great decisions with the ball. He throws dimes, and he can move his feet. And you combine all of that together, and that's a recipe for success at the quarterback position. And I think that's what you saw. And then, I think Kentucky just couldn't. They just couldn't hang for whatever reason. And offensively, you could tell Terry Wilson hadn't played in a year. You could tell there was a lot of rust because he didn't get the chance to go to spring practice again. All this COVID stuff did not give guys like DeJuan Mathis and Terry Wilson and guys that were coming off injury or hadn't played in a while. This was kind of their knock off the rust type game. So Terry Wilson, maybe he improves this week against Ole Miss. I don't know. It's certainly a defense that is primed for that. But going back to Auburn, Seth Williams is playing grown man football. I mean, he went up and mossed the dude. I mean, he's incredible. He's gonna be a handful for Eric Stokes.
All right, Ole Miss at Kentucky in Lexington, 3:00 kickoff, SEC Network. Basically, there is much excitement as there is for Ole Miss on the offensive side of the ball. There's the equal amount of pessimism on the defensive side of the ball. And I think the jump from week 1 to week 2 is going to be pronounced. But how do you see this shaking out?
I see it. I don't think there's going to be a significant improvement from week 1 to week 2. I think the offense is clicking right now. So I don't think there's going to be – I mean, you're probably going to see a little bit drop off in the run game because Kentucky is just good against the run. But I think Kentucky against the pass is maybe more susceptible than we thought. They didn't get as much pressure as I would have liked to see him get against Bo Nix. And I think Matt Corral, I think he moves as good as Bo Nix. And if they go with Plumlee, he definitely moves as good as Bo Nix. And I think they both throw really well. So moving around, moving the pocket, escaping and getting and buying time is going to help Ole Miss. And I think having guys like Jerry Neely and involving him in the passing game, Elijah Moore, getting him involved in the slot, trying to get him matched up on a safety or trying to move him around so we can create matchups for him. I think I think you're going to see some other receivers get involved that you've probably never heard of. And we're going to have to get, you're going to have to get the tight ends involved as well. And I think you're going to have to get a little bit more creative with your schemes because I think Kentucky is going to not allow you to use the run to set up the pass because they're tough against the run. So I'm interested to kind of see what the game plan looks like from here and how different it's going to be from the Florida game because I think Florida is better on the back end than they are up front, and I think Kentucky's the complete opposite.
And Kentucky threw the ball 38 times against Auburn, which is, I don't know, it's like seeing a Sasquatch, basically seeing Kentucky throw the ball that much. Are they just falling too much in love with the forward pass because last year they couldn't do it? Yes.
You have Kavosiey Smoke as your running back. You have Smoke and Rose as your two running backs. So that's a formidable duo. I don't know why they got away from the run. I mean, I think they outcoached themselves in the Auburn game personally. So I think they need to get back and do what they do: run, play defense, control the clock, and grind the game down to a nub. I think the worst thing you can have happen against a team like Ole Miss is let them run their tempo. You know, if you let them run their tempo, they're going to do some damage. What Georgia did against Arkansas, which is a similar system, is they didn't let Arkansas dictate the tempo. There was one series where Arkansas dictated the tempo, and it was the only series they got a touchdown on because they dictated the tempo and they hit one over the top. Ole Miss is going to do that to them. They're going to try to do that to them, and if they let them, it's going to get ugly because Ole Miss has the talent that Arkansas doesn't to be able to make that happen. And so for Kentucky, they need to control the clock and control the pace of the game. And to do that, you got to be able to run the ball, or you got to commit to the run, which they can do because their better players are in the run game this year.
All right. Nate Gabler from the Grove Report stopped by to talk a little bit about this game and the rest of the SEC. Nate Gabler from the Grove Report here joining us on Around the SEC. We're going to talk about Ole Miss versus Kentucky, Lexington, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the SEC Network. How you doing, Nate?
Doing well. How you doing, buddy?
Man, I am doing fantastic. I just want to, this game is going to be one that people turn to later on because the Texas A&M Alabama game gets out of hand at some point. So we can kind of break this down in a way like, what are you looking for as a key point of this game, and what do you expect to happen?
I think primarily for Ole Miss, it's whether or not they can run the football against Kentucky. I mean, you look at this Kentucky team, they hold Auburn to under 100 yards. I want to say it was like 91 or so on the ground. Obviously, Ole Miss this past weekend against Florida, it was more of a game through the air. I mean, Corral goes for 395 passing, but if you look at it, they actually still ran the ball more than they passed. So, I mean, it's still a team that wants to try to set up the passing game through the running game. So I think it's looking at it from that side, it's whether or not Ole Miss can run on Kentucky a little bit. And then the other way, Kentucky is the best offensive line in the SEC. No one really wants to talk about that because it's Kentucky. And Ole Miss really struggled to get home against Kyle Trask last week. So can they pressure Wilson back there, who obviously is less of a passer than Trask is, but they're going to have to get home against this offensive line that's as good as we've seen in a while.
Now, and I expect with the jump from week 1 to week 2, a little bit of improvement there, and especially in the secondary, although the secondary can't be asked to cover somebody for 7 seconds. What do you see going on in the Ole Miss defense that can be corrected?
I think, like I was saying there, the secondary needs to cover better, but, passing game, it's as much of getting after the quarterback as it is covering on the back end. I look at a guy like Ryder Anderson, who this week is credited for 3 quarterback hurries and a hit, but pretty much gets no stats in the game, like as far as, traditional counting stats, sacks, tackles, stuff like that. So if guys can go from being around the quarterback and being like at his feet and just being there to actually hitting Terry Wilson, I think that really – I think that's probably the most correctable thing in a 1-week time span.
Okay, and we're going to change around to a little bit of around the SEC. Your Vanderbilt Commodores got really close to winning College Station, Texas. Is Vanderbilt a better team than we thought they were?
No, they're not. Quickly plug my podcast over at Behind Enemy Sidelines that I do with our state team with Sports Illustrated. But we did a big picture, like SEC win totals preview going into last week. I think 2 of my best bets were that Vanderbilt and Arkansas both go winless. But another one that I really liked was I just have found it so hard to believe in Texas A&M over the past few years. And going into this year, it's even there's a weird number out there that like A&M has been ranked like preseason top 12. I think it's like 13 times this century. So dating back to like the turn of the century. And only twice have they actually finished higher than where they were ranked. It's a team that's always overrated. And the Kellen Mond, Jimbo Fisher thing is another one. If you thought they were ever going to get it going, ever, it would be year 3 with Kellen Mond and Jimbo Fisher opening the season at Kyle Field against this terrible Vanderbilt team. They stunk. So I look at that game as more of a Texas A&M is bad than a Vandy is good game. I would still pick Vandy to go 0-10.
Yeah, and Texas A&M was a 30.5-point favorite. They're not 30.5 points better than anybody. That was free money available to anybody willing to take it.
Yeah, you can also, I mean, we're recording this on, what is today, Tuesday night. You can get Alabama at minus 16.5 at some places against Texas A&M. I would do that.
It's crazy. Also, if you've noticed, the betting lines this week have shifted to heavy the home teams. I don't know if it's a function of the schedule or they're trying to figure out what's going on with this COVID situation and everything, and just leaning on the people that don't have to travel at the moment.
Yeah, I personally am trying not to buy into any of the home field advantage this year, just because, I mean, 25% stadium capacity or whatever is not enough to generate much fan noise, much disruption for a road team. So if I had to guess, I would bet that's just kind of coincidence. But hey, I don't know. I'm not the one setting these lines.
How do you feel about Mississippi State? I think they're giving away 18 points against Arkansas.
Like I said with Vandy, I think Arkansas is bad, and it's a team that's going to struggle to win a game. They put up a really good half against Georgia. Then Georgia comes in and changes their quarterback. Georgia still wasn't able to play JT Daniels in that game, but Georgia still comes out and scores, like 27 unanswered in the second half or something like that. So they played a little better than I anticipated, especially against the run. They held Georgia under 3 yards of carry, but I would still take State again there.
And of course, how do you feel about Auburn and Georgia this weekend?
Auburn was a team I was really high on coming into the year. And, I mean, they were pretty impressive last week against Kentucky. So I don't know if it's me trying to just make my preseason I really like Bo Nix in year 2 pick correct. But I'll take Auburn, and what is it, that 6.5 points or so there?
Yeah. All right. Nate Gabler, The Grove Report, and Behind Enemy Sidelines podcast. Free content. We love free content. Go check him out.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese. We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop. Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
Welcome back. Special thanks to Nate Gabler. Thanks for stopping by and dropping some knowledge on all of us. Must continue and run through the rest of the SEC games this week. Texas A&M versus Bama. I didn't think Texas A&M was 30 points better than anybody. I don't think they're 17 or 18 points close to Alabama. I just do not trust the Texas A&M offense.
Jeb, you want to take this one?
Well, and I didn't get a chance to watch the Texas A&M game live, but I have to agree from what I saw on replays, Texas A&M did not look very good at all. Vanderbilt's defense looked better than I thought they would. Overall, I was impressed with them as a team, not with A&M, though. Alabama slowed down a little bit in the second half, but I think it's only because they could. They looked really good still, as I expected, unfortunately. So I agree. I think Alabama runs away with that one pretty easily.
I mean, say what you want about Ted Roof. I mean, you talk about a guy that, you know, he's been bad as a head coach. He was bad as a head coach at Duke, but as a coordinator, he's been good everywhere he goes. And defense has never really been the issue at some of the places that he goes. Now, some of the places that he ends up is, strength and conditioning and recruiting become the issues, and it overtakes anything you do defensively. So that being said, Texas A&M with Kellen Mond, they come in, they have all these weapons. You would think, okay, we're gonna, they're gonna do something, but they didn't. They underwhelmed, and I think that's kind of been the MO under Jimbo Fisher and in the last couple of years of Kevin Sumlin. They recruit all this great talent, and they come in and underwhelm for a myriad of reasons. But maybe things are too complicated. Maybe they don't buy into what Jimbo Fisher's selling. Maybe there's all sorts of distractions. There's a bunch of me guys. Maybe they're recruiting the wrong people. I don't know. But Bama's a well-oiled machine right now, and I think Bama's going to drub them, first of all, because, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith are going to feast on them. They have a veteran group up front, and then they have a defense that, I mean, it's going to be like the no-name defense back in the 70s. I think it was the Dolphins that had the no-name defense in 72.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's going to be a lot like that, where you're going to see a bunch of guys that, unless you're a recruiting geek, you're not really going to know who they are, except for Surtain and Dylan Moses. And so I think that Alabama has proven year in and year out that all these new names start emerging. Like, how many people have heard of Jalen Waddle? Unless you're an avid Alabama fan, or unless you're one of us doing this around the SEC, you've never heard of Jalen Waddle. I mean, he's just been a random return guy because, I don't know, some guy named Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs were in the mix. So, Devontae Smith goes from number 3 to number 1, doesn't skip a beat. Terrace Marshall goes from number 3 to number 1. LSU loses as 16-point favorites to Mississippi State. Go figure. The difference is coaching.
All right, Mississippi State and Arkansas in Starkville. I suspect this is going to be a shootout, and Arkansas is actually going to put up points with Mike Leach's defense. I expect a letdown from Mississippi State. I expect Arkansas to continue building as they get more reps in the Kendall Briles system. Every game that goes by, Arkansas is going to get better. Ole Miss is going to get better. Mississippi State's going to get better, and Missouri is going to get better. Just because those reps that they lost in spring and early fall camp, now they're starting to get to the point where you would be at the normal season beginning. So I'm looking forward to this game because it's a contrast in style, but also because Arkansas does a lot of the same things as Ole Miss. This is like an early Egg Bowl preview.
It really is. I mean, it's going to be a fun one, I think. I'm definitely taking the over. The over-under set at 69, which is insane.
Nice.
But Costello, 60 passes, first of all, attempted for him. And, you have a myriad of weapons, Osiris Mitchell being one of them. He had 7 catches. Then you have Javonte Payton, who, if you Nashvillians know who he is, he is a Metro kid, actually played at Hillsboro before going to JUCO, I think Northeast Mississippi Junior College.
Northwest, I think.
It was one of those two. I know it was a North something. It was down there near Memphis, just on the other side of just on the Mississippi line, just beyond it on the. God, I can't even say that. Just on the Mississippi side of Memphis. How about that?
Yeah, Senatobia off on I-55.
There you go. I couldn't spit it out. But yeah, so you have Javonte Payton, who had 6 catches for over 100 yards. I was really impressed. And Steve, one of our biggest questions, and I'm going to ask your opinion on this. I thought they did a great job of getting Kylan Hill involved in the game. He had 8 catches for, I think, $150. It didn't have much running, but they got him involved in other ways as well. I mean, he had 15 touches. They got him his 15 touches, which is great.
Yeah, LSU busted a wheel route that ended up going for 75 yards and a touchdown. It could look a little bit different if that play doesn't happen. But there's a potential there with Kylan Hill that he will look like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the way LSU used him last year.
Yeah, I think so. And I think opportunity will open in the run game. I think LSU's a little bit better up front than Arkansas is against the run. And so I think there'll be more opportunity for him to run and more opportunity for him to get more out of his carries than he did. In an offense like this, you're just going to have to try to get more out of less, so to speak. And so that's just going to be kind of the new challenge for Colin Hill.
All right, LSU and Vanderbilt from Nashville. Vanderbilt is a 20-point dog in this game at home. I am just not sure that LSU is 20 points better at this point than anybody in the league.
I don't think so either, but yeah, go ahead, Jeb.
Oh, I was just gonna say, no, it's hard to remember with Vandy sometimes, and this is living in Tennessee. Sometimes you are a little harder on them than we should be because they've beaten Tennessee a few times recently. But Vanderbilt may not be a great SEC team, but they're still a really good football team. And I think we saw this last week. I was really impressed with their defense last week and what they did, and with their freshman quarterback. I know he didn't do a whole lot, but he didn't make any big mistakes. It was actually not a bad debut at all for a freshman, especially at Vanderbilt. I think he was only, what did I read, maybe the third freshman to start, true freshman to start for an SEC team in a long time. I think he did really well, and LSU definitely did not look good. So I think Vanderbilt will keep this a lot closer than that line. I actually think it'll be a pretty decent game. I still think LSU will win it, of course, but I'm kind of excited for that one. I think it's going to be better than people think.
Yeah, I do too, man. I think what we're forgetting is, or I think what a lot of people are forgetting. I'm not forgetting it certainly. And my buddy Matt Perkins over at Believe in Vandy, he certainly hasn't forgotten this notion, but people seem to forget again that Vandy has very little experience coming back on either side of the ball. And that goes from basically from the top down. I mean, Derek Mason gutted his staff just about, hired brand new coordinators, veteran coordinators that had about 74 years of coaching experience between the two of them. Ted Roof has been great everywhere he's been. Todd Fitch, we're going to see if he can succeed without Skip Holtz. Anytime he's been with Skip Holtz, he's done tremendous. Anytime he's been away from him, i.e. Boston College, he's had one of the worst offenses in the country. So something's got to give, right? But I think they're going to get better each and every week. You're going to see a team that's going to look totally different than they did against A&M. They're going to play great defense still, and I think you're going to see a little bit more cohesion on the offensive side of the ball. So it's only going to get better. They have a lot of inexperience, a lot of youth on both sides of the ball, and a lot of new schemes and concepts with the coordinator. So this game is going to be close. It's going to be tight for a little while. LSU might pull away, but because sometimes that's what LSU seems to do. But I think the last time, was it last year, Steve, that LSU came to Nashville?
Yeah, it was last year.
Yeah, I mean that game was, that wasn't necessarily an easy go for LSU for a while. I mean, eventually they pulled away, but it wasn't an easy go for a little while. And I think if I remember, there was almost a bench clearing brawl too.
Yeah, in this game, I expect to see two things. One, until LSU can stop a shallow crossing route, you're going to see a steady diet of it.
That mesh concept, Steve, you got to love it.
Mm-hmm. And as if Miles Brennan wants to throw a ball up for grabs like he did 2 or 3 times against Mississippi State, Vanderbilt will come up with it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, South Carolina and Florida from the swamp. We basically talked about this. South Carolina was good. They just weren't good when it mattered against Tennessee. And Florida looked terrific on offense. And there's some maybe some reasons for concern on defense. How do you see this game going?
Ooh, that's one of those tricky ones, man. It's South Carolina can be kind of pesky in this matchup because there's some things I feel like for whatever reason South Carolina oftentimes matches up well with Florida. On one hand, I could see it being tight, kind of like South Carolina's game was last week. But on the other hand, if they don't have an answer for Kyle Pitts, this game is going to get ugly and get out of hand quickly. I mean, I'm picking Florida to cover the spread because why not? But they covered last week and probably they probably could have poured it on more. I think they're going to start a little faster. But that's where I'm leaning. But I think South Carolina definitely has it in them to make this very difficult for the Gators. I think they have some guys again. I've used this word a lot, inexperience, and they have a lot of guys that outside of Shi Smith, I think they have a lot of question marks. And if those question marks hit, they can be a very dangerous team. And if they figure some things out, they can be really dangerous. But as of right now, they don't have that figured out very much. They got to figure out special teams too, by the way, in case you're wondering. But Florida, they're dangerous on offense. They'll get after you on defense, but still, they gave up 35 points to Ole Miss. An offense that's again was trying to find their way. We weren't sure what Ole Miss was going to bring to the table offensively. Obviously, they're explosive, and Florida found that out. So Florida's got to figure some things out on defense, and that could be where this game gets tricky. Florida's defense versus South Carolina's offense, because Mike Bobo is a great schemer, and he knows Todd Grantham very well. Third and Grantham is a real thing. Third and Grantham is a real thing. Florida fans know. Georgia fans listening to this especially know Third and Grantham. I think a lot of Georgia fans just had nightmares about it, or I guess whatever you call that. But it's crazy, man. I think Florida's eventually going to cover. I think they cover late, so that's how I see it going.
All right, Jeb, you watched South Carolina this past weekend and Florida. How do you see this game going?
I was picking South Carolina to cover, but I'm not sure about that. If Tennessee had even decent quarterback play, I think they would have run away with that game a little bit more. They had a lot of good looks, a lot of open opportunities that Garantano just could not hit the receiver. Florida won't make that mistake. Trask is really good. Kyle Pitts, of course, is just amazing, or that wasn't the first game. I think Florida could easily end up taking off and leaving South Carolina behind in that game. I picked South Carolina to cover just because in the SEC we don't see that a lot, especially with Florida. There's always seems to be something that happens that keeps the game a little closer. But I could definitely see Florida end up running away with that game.
Jeb, with getting ahead of himself, we'll get to the pick segment in a little bit. Missouri and Tennessee, Eliah Drinkwitz gets a little bit easier for him with to play in Tennessee this weekend, but it's going to be a situation where you can expect Tennessee to ground and pound it away. Cade Mays eligible, got his waiver from the SEC, so he can play this weekend. Joey Gatewood also can as well. Otis Reese still in the dark for some reason. I don't know why he hasn't gotten his waiver at the moment. But Missouri and Tennessee, Jeb, what do you think about that game?
Well, you're right. That'll definitely be an easier way for Missouri than last week was. Of course, the line reflects that. It's a 10-point drop there. But I think – or more than that. But Tennessee, it just – without knowing what's going to happen at quarterback, I didn't know what exactly Tennessee's going to do. If Garantano comes out and plays well, I think Tennessee will put this game away pretty early. He probably won't come out playing well. So I think it could be a fun game up until the end. I still think Tennessee is better than Missouri, though, and should be able to win this game.
Yeah, if this game was taking place later on in the year, I would probably start looking to lean towards Missouri. But I think right now they're just not ready. They just don't have much, and I think outside of Arkansas, I think Missouri is the next worst team in the conference, and then you got Vanderbilt right now as your bottom three, and I think you can flip a coin between Missouri and Arkansas at this point as far as talent wise and winnability, I guess. Tennessee, what scares the crap out of me is Jared Guarantano. I think he is a disaster waiting to happen. I think you get more bang for your buck with Strout or even Maurer, but I think Maurer is having nightmares and PTSD of Eric Stokes taking his soul away from him last year in Knoxville. So I don't think he's quite fully recovered. But then again, Jeb, I'm gonna ask you this: if Harrison Bailey and Jared Guarantano are close, would you go with Harrison Bailey, and why wouldn't you play the freshman that has time to develop, especially in a weird season like this season?
If they're close, I definitely would. I'm assuming, and I haven't read enough coming out of Tennessee to figure out what exactly is going on, because Jeremy Pruitt's not real open with some of that information. I'm assuming, being a true freshman and with this offseason being the way it was with COVID-19, they just weren't able to get him enough reps to feel like that he should play this year, and are going to redshirt him. I don't know what's wrong. Like I said, with Schrute, I think Schrute would actually be the best option in my opinion, from what I've read. But I'm not there watching the games or watching the practices, so I don't know that for sure. But yeah, if he's close, I don't see why you wouldn't bring him out and see how he does, because, like you said, Garantano, I think you said it right with just disaster waiting to happen. Every throw that he throws may either be a great throw, probably a bad throw, could be disastrous throw. And it's very nerve-wracking as a fan to watch that and never know every time he releases the ball what's going to happen with it in the air. I would much rather see a young player who, if something bad does happen, at least you can say, hey, he's young and he's learning, and he's going to be our guy for the next 3-4 years, so hopefully he gets it together. So I agree. I think if he's close, they should play him. But I don't think they will.
No, they probably won't. I mean, I think Jeremy Pruitt's going to play that tight to the vest Bama strategy of play the mediocre quarterback that's going to take care of the ball. I don't know that they're seeing that correctly in Quarantano. I don't think he's going to necessarily be that guy. He is so far. And right now they're on a heater, so I guess I understand it, but I don't know. I'd probably do it a little bit differently, I guess.
And that's true. They can at least say they have the longest SEC winning streak right now.
But I guess that's why Jeremy Pruitt is there, and I'm here doing podcasts with you guys. So there you go.
All right, that is the preview for this weekend's games on Around the SEC. Coming up next segment, picks. We're gonna get it on.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese. We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop. Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
Welcome back to Around the SEC. Stephen Willis along with Corey Burton and Jeff Beecham. It's time for our famed pick segment on the best weekend primer in SEC football around the SEC. Guys, are you ready for this?
I'm born ready. I need to redeem myself after last week.
Yes, last week I went 4-3. Jeb went 3-4. Corey went 2-5, and Becky went 5-2. So,
well, of course,
we have that going for us, which is lovely. All right, first up, Ole Miss plus 6.5 versus Kentucky. I'm taking Ole Miss because I believe in the offense, and I don't think Kentucky's going to be able to score enough to pull away.
I agree with that. I think Lane Kiffin has Ole Miss's offense already firing pretty well, which is amazing since he just got there. And I think they're going to be better than Kentucky at scoring. Kentucky will try and run the ball. Maybe if they can keep it close, they have a chance. But I think Ole Miss will end up pulling away. Kentucky playing from behind won't be able to catch up.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is just too explosive, has too much firepower offensively for Kentucky to be able to keep up, even even though they're good up front. I think they're better against the run than they are getting a pass rush, and they play right into Ole Miss's strengths. I think Terry Wilson, although he's going to be a little bit better, I still don't think has enough, and I think Ole Miss's defense is going to improve each and every week, even if it's just a little bit, like 1 or 2%. I think that'll be enough this week to it's a favorable matchup for the Rebs. I like them plus 6.5. I like them outright.
All right, South Carolina plus 17.5 versus Florida. I'm taking the Gators because you have that offense and going to get mixed with what is basically a pissed off defense.
Yes, and I took South Carolina to be able to cover this one. I know I said earlier that this one could be a scary one where Florida just completely runs away with it. South Carolina did make some good adjustments at halftime and looked much better in the second half. I don't know if that's something that will carry over into this game, but I know they needed a little time. They also were without their top defensive back for the second half. I never did read exactly why he was sitting out. But if they can come back and at least play decent defense, I'm going to say they're going to keep it close enough to get under 17.5, but they're definitely not going to win.
Yeah, that point spread is very tempting, but I'm not falling for it because I fell for it last week. I said, man, week 1, all these ridiculous spreads. And guess what? I won Tennessee, won Bama, lost Ole Miss, lost Arkansas, lost LSU, won Vandy, and lost Kentucky. So I'm not falling for these huge spreads now. We're on Florida, right? Did I lose my spot? Yeah, so I'm taking the Gators. I'm taking the Gators minus 17.5 at home. Trask is on a roll. Kadarius Toney and Kyle Pitts are two of the best skill guys in the conference. People are going to have a hard time defending them, and so I think they're going to run up some points, and South Carolina's going to fall apart.
Missouri plus 11.5 versus Tennessee. I'm taking the Vols in this one. This feels like a 28-14 game.
Man, I wish. Look, just as a fan of Tennessee my whole life, I don't feel like Tennessee is just going to beat anybody by 2 touchdowns right now. They unfortunately they love keeping games close. I don't know why. I don't know if they have a contract to try and give heart attacks to their fans or what it is. I do think Tennessee's a lot better than Missouri, so I expect them to win. But I just can't take Tennessee covering the spread ever unless it's a lot closer, like last week when it was just 3.5.
If it was anybody else, I would take the points. But it's Missouri, and it's week 2. If this matchup were in week 6, maybe we're looking at Missouri either covering or outright winning. But I think Tennessee right now, as it stands, are at least 14 points better than Missouri, and that is a knock on Missouri because they're just not very good right now. There's a reason why they hired a new head coach. So I'm taking the Vols.
I hope you're both right.
Auburn getting 6.5 points versus Georgia. I'm going with the Auburn Tigers, but I think Georgia is going to win the game. I just think it's going to be closer than the experts think. Sorry, Lee Corso.
And I completely agree with that. Both of these teams had slow starts last week, but took off later on in the game. And I think Georgia is the better team overall and will win it, but I think Auburn will be able to keep that close.
This game's always a slugfest. It's going to ride on the shoulders of Zamir White this week, and it's going to try to figure out what the quarterback situation is. If it's anything close to the first half last week, Auburn's a smart pick here, but I'm going to go with the homer pick, and I'm picking the Dogs.
All right, Arkansas plus 18 versus Mississippi State coming off that huge win in Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. I'm going with Arkansas in this game simply because I think there's going to be a letdown by Mississippi State, and I think Arkansas is going to raise their game offensively.
And I was surprised by Arkansas last week. I think they played really, really well. Mississippi State, of course, played a lot better than I would have ever imagined. And I know the smart money says that they're going to come back down to earth at some point, but right now, while that air raid's working and clicking like it is, I'm going to keep betting on it until it does finally come back down. So I'm going with Mississippi State.
Well, good news for Arkansas is they're not playing against the best defense in the conference this week against Mississippi State. So naturally, they probably will, more than less, cross the 50-yard line, much less score points. I think they'll score more points. They had a hard time crossing the 50 against Georgia. I think they did it once. Twice if you count the turnover where they already started inside the 50. So naturally, I think they're going to score a little bit more points. However, they don't have the horses right now, and Mississippi State does, and Mississippi State's going to pour it on them. I think Mississippi State's going to win by 3 touchdowns because KJ Costello, he's going to have a letdown game, and a letdown game for a Mike Leach-led quarterback is 450 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's technically a letdown, but I think he's going to have one of those type games.
LSU giving 20 points away to Vanderbilt in Nashville. I'm going with the Doors in this game because 31-14 will not cover for LSU. I think it's going to be somewhere in that level.
I think
agree.
LSU, yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think LSU's going to have a hard time scoring on Vandy. Honestly, I think it's going to be tight for a long time, and they're not going to have time to cover. So I'm taking the Doors.
I agree. I was very impressed with Vanderbilt and very unimpressed with LSU last week. And while LSU is still the better team, still has better players at every position, I think Vanderbilt will keep it a lot closer than 20 points.
CBS fell for the hype scheduled Texas A&M plus 17.5 versus Alabama. Take Alabama. I didn't think last week Texas A&M was 30 points better than anybody. I don't think they're within 3 touchdowns of Bama.
And unfortunately, I hate saying it as a Tennessee fan, but Bama is the best team in the SEC right now, and A&M is nowhere close. So I'm taking Alabama as well.
Yeah, roll tide on this one. I mean, I think, obviously Bama is showing that they are still the premier team in this conference, and they're going to show it again.
All right, and that will do it for Around the SEC. For Corey Burton and Jeb Beecham, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.